Russia is betting its aviation future on an aircraft they themselves abandoned decades ago. The Ilyushin IL-96 four-engines Soviet ambition vanished from airports while Boeings and Airbuses conquered the skies. Today, this forgotten giant is being resurrected. Not because it's efficient, not because it's modern, but because Russia has no other choice. In 2022, Western sanctions severed Russia's aviation lifeline. No parts, no support, no future. Russian airlines relied heavily on Western jets. Suddenly, the Il-96 transformed from obsolete embarrassment to a potential critical strategic asset. Think about that. An entire nation's connectivity now depends on reviving technology most considered dead. While the world flies ultra-efficient twin jets, Russia is doubling down on fourth-thirsty engines and Soviet-era design philosophy. Is this resilience or desperation? The answer reveals something profound about what happens when geopolitics collides with 38,000 feet of altitude. When isolation becomes weaponized? When self-reliance matters more than efficiency? This isn't about an airplane. It's about sovereignty, survival, and the extraordinary lengths one nation will go to keep flying when you're pushed for your choices. September 28, 1988, Moscow. A massive four-engine aircraft lifts off the runway, the culmination of Soviet aerospace ambition. The Il-96 wasn't just an airliner, it was a declaration. The USSR wanted to build wide bodies to rival Boeing and Airbus. The timing seemed perfect. The West had unleashed the Boeing 747 and Airbus A300, transforming global travel. Moscow refused to be left behind. Every detail pushed Soviet technology to its limits. Winglets reduced drag. Cutting edge for the era. The new PS-90 engines finally gave Russia turbofans that could on paper compete with Western power plants, advanced avionics, refined flight controls, a cabin designed for transcontinental comfort. This was the late 1980s, the Cold War's final act. For Soviet engineers, the Il-6 represented more than technology. It promised to connect Moscow with Tokyo, Havana, New York without compromise. To break the West's monopoly on long-range flight, to ensure the USSR would never depend on foreign aircraft. Test pilots spoke of it with reverence. Here was proof that Soviet ambition could still innovate. But hidden in that ambition was a fatal assumption. The Il-96 was designed for a world that would cease to exist just 3 years later. A world where captive markets, state airlines, and political priorities trumped economic logic. What happens when the nation that birthed you disappears? December 1991 changed everything. The Soviet Union collapsed, and with it the Il-6 future crumbled overnight. Aeroflot, the world's largest airline and the Il-96 primary customer, splintered into dozens of smaller carriers. The captive market vanished. Suddenly, Russian airlines could buy Western aircraft, and they did. Boeing 767s flooded in. Airbus A310s followed. The logic was brutal, but simple. 2 engines burn less fuel than 4. Western avionics didn't need flight engineers. Global support networks meant reliable maintenance. The Il-96 instant dinosaur. Production numbers, they tell the story. In the first decade, 1 or 2 aircraft per year, some years, nothing. Without volume, costs soared. Each Il-96 became prohibitively expensive, a vicious cycle ensuring its own demise. For every Il-96 that flew, another sat unfinished, aluminum monuments to lost ambition. Technology had moved on. Western jets operated with 2 pilot cockpits, Steel 96 that required 3 crew members. Competitors offered standardized parts worldwide. Russian supply chains, they were patchy, unreliable. As time went on, every disadvantage compounded. Fuel consumption, complexity, maintenance headaches. Airlines walked away. By 2009, even the Russian government admitted defeat. The Il-96-300 was officially shelved. A few soldiered on as cargo haulers or government transporters, most headed for scrapyards. The dream was dead. Or was it? February 2022 redrew the aviation map. Russia's invasion of Ukraine triggered unprecedented sanctions. Not just political posturing, a full technological blockade. Boeing and Airbus deliveries canceled. Spare parts shipments halted. Lease agreements voided. Russian airlines woke up to a nightmare. Their entire fleets, hundreds of Western jets, became fragile assets. No parts meant no maintenance. No maintenance meant grounding. Within months, carriers began cannibalizing aircraft, stripping one plane to keep 3 flying, but the crisis went deeper. European airspace closed. Northern American routes forbidden. Suddenly, flying from Moscow to Asia meant threading narrow corridors over the Arctic or Pacific. Fuel burns skyrocketed. Flight times stretched. Every route became a logistical puzzle with no good solutions. Here's what the West was really saying. Without our technology, Russia doesn't fly. Moscow's response? If you won't sell us planes, we'll build our own. The IL-96, that forgotten relic, suddenly looked different. Yes, it burned more fuel. Yes, it was outdated. But it had one priceless advantage. Every component was Russian-made. No foreign dependencies. No sanctions could touch it. Overnight, obsolescence became sovereignty. The Kremlin saw more than an airplane. They saw a symbol, proof that Russia could maintain global reach despite Western pressure, that isolation won't mean surrender. Can you imagine betting your nation's connectivity on technology most considered dead? That's exactly what Russia is doing. Why resurrect a 4-engine dinosaur when the world flies efficient twins? The answer starts with brutal necessity. Name another long-range jet Russia can build with 0 Western components. The list is short, IL-96. That is it. While the Yakovlev MC-21 and SEOY Superjet are in development and flying respectively, both have faced issues due to reliance on Western components pre-sanctions. Every bolt, wire, and line of code can be sourced domestically. In a sanctions environment, that's not just valuable, it's existential. But there's more. Those 4 engines, everyone mocks their insurance. Russian flights now traverse routes hours from suitable airports. When you're threading between closed airspaces over the Arctic, redundancy trumps fuel economy. 2 engines might be efficient. 4 engines get you home. The IL-96's range becomes crucial too. With direct routes blocked, Russian carriers fly massive detours. Only a true long hauler can connect Moscow to Latin America or Southeast Asia under current restrictions. Then consider the Kremlin's specific needs. This is Putin's preferred aircraft, not by accident. Government VIP flights demand absolute security and sovereignty. Military variants need platforms beyond foreign influence. Strategic cargo requires reliability over efficiency. The trade-offs are real. The IL-96 drinks fuel. Maintenance is complex. Operating costs hurt. But ask yourself, what's the alternative? In normal times, efficiency rules. These aren't normal times due to Russia's actions. When cooperation dies, self-reliance becomes the only currency that matters. Less efficient becomes more reliable. Obsolete transforms into essential. The IL-96, it's not transportation. It's a flying declaration of independence. A 300-ton middle finger to sanctions. Expensive? Absolutely. Necessary? Russia thinks so. Resurrecting a 1980s airliner isn't enough. Russia needs the IL-6 to compete in the 2020s. Enter the IL-96-400M. Same bones, new brain. The transformation starts in the cockpit. Gone are rows of analog instruments. Digital displays dominate. Flight management systems rival Western jets. The 3-person crew requirement history. Modern IL-96 fly with 2 pilots, cutting operational costs. Cabin improvements focus on the details that matter. LED lighting, advanced climate control, quieter interiors, seating for 300 passengers, competitive with mid-sized wide bodies. Not luxurious by Emirates standards, but functional for a sanctions-era carrier. The real challenge replacing Western components? Pre-sanctions 96s incorporated foreign avionics and systems. Now every imported chip sensor and display must be swapped for Russian alternatives. Each substitution demands testing, certification, trust building. Imagine reverse engineering decades of Western innovation under pressure. Then there's the engine question. Current Il-96s use Aviad Vegito PS-90s, reliable but thirsty. Russia's developing the PD-35, a next-generation high-thrust turbofan. The dream, a twin-engine IL-96 that could finally match Western efficiency, but dreams meet reality. The PD-35 exists mostly on paper. Certification could take years. Until then, 4 engines remain mandatory. Here's what's remarkable. Russian engineers are pulling it off under embargo with limited resources. They're building modern aircraft, not cutting edge by global standards, but functional. Flying Russian? Is it optimal? No. Is it working? Against all odds? Yes. The IL-96's unexpected return becomes even more poignant when you consider what might have been. For years, Russia pursued a different path. Collaboration, not isolation. China's Comarmac, established in 2008, was on a mission to challenge the Boeing Airbus Dopey. The C929 widebody was one of their projects, a twin-engine aircraft with 250 to 320 passengers and 12,000-kilometer range designed to compete directly with the Airbus A330neo and Boeing 787. Russia saw opportunity in 2017. Comarmac and Russia's United Aircraft Corporation formed the China-Russia Commercial Aircraft International Corporation. The CR-929 project would combine Russia's aerospace expertise with China's vast financial resources. Budget 13 to 20 billion, maiden flight 2028. The division was clear. Russia would design composite wings and supply PD-35 engines. China would handle the fuselage and final assembly in Shanghai. It was pitched as a sanctions-resistant alternative. But this grand partnership slowly unraveled by 2023. Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine brought fresh sanctions, crippling UAC's access to critical suppliers. Comarmac grew concerned that continued Russian involvement could taint the entire project, jeopardizing global marketability and certification. Battles erupted over technology and money. Russia wanted to protect its technological crown jewels. China prioritized financial control and reportedly refused to share revenue from sales within its own massive domestic market. By June 2023, Carmack rebranded the CR-929 simply as the C929, removing UAC's logos at the Paris Air Show. But by November, Comarmac officially stated the C929 was independently developed by China. Russia was out. The partnership's collapse reinforced Moscow's forced pivot to the IL-96, a stark reminder of the challenges of international airspace ventures in a divided world. When cooperation dies, you're left with what you can build alone. Reality check. Russia wants 2 Il-6s per year. The Voron plant has produced only 1 to 2 96 annually in recent decades. Imagine restarting a production line that's essentially been mothballed, finding workers, training them, sourcing thousands of components when your old suppliers are gone. Manufacturing muscle memory doesn't return overnight? Then multiply every normal aerospace challenge by sanctions. Need specialized alloys? Build the supply chain? Require advanced composites? Develop them domestically. Want modern avionics? Designed from scratch? Each Western component replaced introduces risk. Will the Russian substitute perform identically in all conditions for 30 years? Nobody knows until planes start flying and failing. The human factor compounds everything. Soviet-era engineers who built the original IL-96s retired, dead immigrated. Their knowledge went with them. Training replacements under pressure with limited resources could result in mistakes. Quality control suffers. Deadlines slip. Economically, the math is punishing. Low volume means astronomical unit costs. Each IL-96 costs far more than a mass-produced Boeing 787. Airlines must choose, pay premium prices for inefficient Russian jets, or risk having no long-haul capability at all. Even with government subsidies, it's unsustainable. Certification adds yet another layer of pain. International certification is unlikely due to sanctions and distrust of Russian standards, limiting export potential. Domestic certification is less stringent but still complex. Delay compounds delay. Doubt feeds doubt. Here's the brutal question. Is this a path to aviation sovereignty or expensive life support for a dying patient? The answer, it depends on how long Russia can afford to bleed money for independence. Strip away the technical details. Forget fuel burn and production rates. The IL-96 is about something bigger. Every completed aircraft rolling out of Tehran would send a message. Russia endures. Sanctions haven't broken us. We can still build complex machines, maintain global reach, and project power. For a nation whose aerospace industry once attempted to rival America's, that matters. The psychological dimension runs deep. Aviation, it's always been Russia's calling card. From Sputnik to Soyuz, MiGs to SEO, accepting Western dependence for something as fundamental as airlines' wounded national pride. The Il-6 return heals that wound. Practically, it's a sovereignty multiplier. When Putin boards his IL-96 for international summit, he flies Russian. When diplomats traverse sanctioned airspace, they trust Russian engineering. Military commanders rely on Russian-built command platforms. No foreign government can ground these aircraft with a phone call. The global implications stretch further. If Russia demonstrates that sanction-proof aviation is possible, however expensive, other nations take notice. Countries facing Western pressure might seek alternatives. The aerospace duopoly of Boeing and Airbus suddenly looks less invincible. China watches closely. So does Iran. Any nation contemplating strategic autonomy sees a test case unfolding. Will it work? That's almost beside the point. The attempt itself changes the game. It says technological homogeny isn't permanent. That determination can substitute for efficiency. That sovereignty has a price, and some nations will pay it. The Il-96 isn't an airplane anymore. It's a bet on the future of global power. Where does the Il-6 go from here? Russia's ambitions stretch beyond mere survival. The ultimate goal, a twin-engine IL-96 powered by PD-35s, finally matching Western efficiency. If achieved, it rewrites everything. Fuel burn drops. Operating costs plummet. Suddenly, the Il-96 becomes commercially viable, just not politically necessary. But that's a massive if. The PD-35 remains largely theoretical, even when built. Transforming a four-engine design into an efficient twin demands more than engine swaps, structural changes, system overhauls, years of testing, certification battles. Export dreams add another dimension. Could countries seeking independence from Western aerospace buy Russian? In theory, nations facing sanctions or pursuing strategic autonomy might value an Airbus or Boeing alternative. Iran, Venezuela, maybe others. What if geopolitics shift? Would Russia abandon the IL-96 for cheaper Western jets if the sanctions were lifted? Or has this experience fundamentally changed Moscow's calculus? The next decade will reveal which path emerges. The IL-96's resurrection is a story without precedent. A superpower cut off from global aviation due to its war-mongering leadership betting its connectivity on technology the world abandoned. It's simultaneously desperate and defiant, expensive and essential. A step backward that might somehow lead forward, from Cold War ambition through post-Soviet collapse to sanctions-driven revival. This aircraft embodies Russia's entire modern journey. Each rivet carries history. Each flight broadcasts resilience. But resilience isn't efficiency. Pride isn't economics. The challenges are staggering. Building complex aircraft without global supply chains. Competing against superior Western designs. Sustaining programs that build money. The Il-6 must overcome all this while serving as a symbol of national determination. Can it succeed? Success might not mean what we think. Maybe the IL-96 never matches the Boeing 787's efficiency. Maybe it remains a niche player, flying government missions and strategic routes. But if it keeps Russia connected, maintains sovereignty, and proves sanctions can't ground an entire nation, isn't that victory? The implications ripple beyond Moscow. Every IL-96 that flies challenges assumptions about technological dependence, about whether efficiency always trumps independence, about what happens when the globe becomes fractured. We're witnessing something unprecedented, the first major test of aviation sovereignty in the modern era. What do you think? Is Russia's bet on the IL-96 visionary or quixotic? Can isolation breed innovation, or will economics inevitably win? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't about one aircraft or one nation. It's about the future of flight in a divided world.